I never imagined the place I called home could feel so foreign. My name is Kieran, and I was 23 when everything started to unravel. Fresh out of university, filled with plans and quiet hopes, I moved back into the house I grew up in. It wasn't permanent. I just needed a few months to save up before moving out again. At least, that was the plan. My father had remarried a few years back. Anita was his new wife. She was polished, always smiling, always perfect. And she had a daughter, Ria. 1 year younger than me, tall, soft-spoken, and eerily polite. She called my father Dad, as if she'd known him forever, and for some reason, that bothered me. I told myself it was childish. I had no real reason to dislike her. But something about her presence made my skin crawl. The house hadn't changed much. Same beige walls, same sofa, with the tiny wine stain I made when I was 14. But it felt different. Quieter. Sterile. As though my laughter, my childhood, had been wiped clean and replaced with something curated. Something that didn't belong to me anymore. One evening, while I was unpacking the last of my things in my old room, I noticed my bookshelf was missing. The handmade, one my mother gifted me when I turned 12. I checked the hallway. Nothing. I asked Dad at dinner. He looked puzzled. "I thought you took it with you," he said. I hadn't. I remembered distinctly leaving it behind, unable to fit it in my tiny dorm room. That was the first sign. It was small, insignificant even, but it stayed with me. Then there was the look. I walked into the living room one morning and saw Anita whispering something to Ria. As soon as they saw me, they stopped. Ria's smile tightened. Anita's eyes scanned me quickly, then turned cold. "Good morning," she said too brightly. I nodded, but the pit in my stomach twisted. Still, I ignored it. I was being paranoid, right? Adjusting back into a family dynamic after years of independence could be awkward. That's all. I went about my routine, waking early, applying for jobs, going for runs in the evening. I avoided dinner conversations, pretended not to notice when my favorite mug suddenly went missing, or when my name was left out of family group texts. One afternoon, I returned home to find Ria in my room. She stood by my closet, holding one of my shirts. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. She jumped a little, then smiled. "Oh, I thought this was mine. We have such similar taste." I looked her dead in the eye. That shirt had my initials sewn inside the collar, my mother's handwriting, the one she stitched when I left for college. "It's not," I said, reaching for it. She handed it over and walked out without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting the slow rotations of the fan. I could hear faint murmurs downstairs, my father and Anita speaking in hushed tones. My name floated up once or twice, followed by silence. I sat up, heart pounding. I strained to hear more, but it was useless. Maybe I was imagining things. Stress could make people jumpy, overthink. Maybe I was just struggling to readjust. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it grew. I caught Anita replacing a photo on the mantel, the one with me and Dad at my graduation. She replaced it with one of her and Ria at a charity event. I stood there, watching her, and she didn't flinch. "We need to make space for everyone," she said flatly. Even the air in the house felt heavy now. Every word was weighed. Every glance measured. A week later, I was late returning from an interview. As I entered, I saw the three of them, Dad, Anita, and Ria, seated on the couch. My father looked tense, his hands clasped tightly. "Kieran," Anita said, "we need to talk." Something in me sank. They told me they felt it was time I moved out, that I needed to spread my wings and find my own space. Ria, they said, was also preparing for some major life changes, and the house was going to be reorganized. It wasn't a request. I blinked at my father, hoping he'd say something, anything. But he didn't. His eyes flickered with guilt, but he remained silent. I nodded slowly, trying to keep the tears from spilling. "How long do I have?" 2 weeks, Anita answered, already standing to leave. I packed that night. I didn't cry, not yet. I was too numb. My room, once a sanctuary, now felt like enemy territory. Every drawer I opened felt like a goodbye. As I zipped my suitcase, I found a piece of paper shoved at the back of my bookshelf drawer, my old bookshelf. The one that had disappeared. It was a photo, torn at the edges. A picture of me and my mom. My real mom. And on the back, in neat cursive, were the words, "You don't belong here anymore." I sat there for hours, holding that photo. No one had said those words aloud. But they didn't have to. They already had. I moved out in exactly 12 days. Not 14, because Anita made it clear that they had cleaners scheduled and redecorating to begin. I found a small, poorly lit apartment on the edge of town. It smelled like stale cigarettes and loneliness. But it was mine. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without having to shrink. But even from that distance, the shadows of what happened followed me. At first, I tried to shake it off. Started focusing on job interviews again. Applied to anything within reach. Worked part-time at a used bookstore just to stay afloat. Smiled when I didn't feel like it. But the silence from my father haunted me more than the eviction itself. He didn't call. Not once. Not to check in. Not even to see if I was okay. This man, who once taught me to ride a bike, who waited outside every one of my dance recitals, was now unreachable. I texted him one night. "Hope everything's okay. Just wanted to say hi." The message was marked read. No reply. That's when the suspicion began to creep in, not like a storm, but like a slow leak. Quiet, invisible, corrosive. I started wondering, was this all really Anita's idea? Or was Dad a part of it all along? Rhea had been posting pictures, flawless, perfect little Instagram squares. Her with my father, smiling. Captions like "family first" and "Dad's little girl 2 hearts." It made me sick. I zoomed in on one post. It was a selfie Rhea in my room. The curtains were different now. The wall painted a muted gray. And on the shelf behind her, my bookshelf. The one they said disappeared. Right there. Plain as day. They didn't even try to hide it. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every moment since I came back. The looks. The silence. The lies. And that picture I found in my drawer, the one of me and Mom with that message on the back. "You don't belong here anymore." I had never seen that handwriting before. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Mom's. I kept it with me now, tucked into my journal. I thought about confronting them. About showing up unannounced and demanding answers. But what would I say? They'd deny it. Gaslight me. Call me paranoid. So instead, I started digging. I reached out to an old neighbor, Mrs. Desai. She'd lived next door since before I was born. She remembered my mom. Remembered the day Anita moved in. She sounded surprised when I called. "Oh, Beta, you moved out already?" That was fast. "We were just saying how strange it was." Strange? I pressed. "Well, all those big delivery trucks coming in and out. Thought you were moving to a new city with your father, not just disappearing." "I didn't move with him," I said. "I was kicked out." There was a pause. "Oh, I didn't know that." I hung up shortly after. My mind raced. Big delivery trucks? I logged into an old email account I hadn't used in months, the one I used to link to our family's home security system. Miraculously, the access hadn't been revoked yet. I clicked through to the motion alerts. The camera facing the front gate showed something strange. 2 weeks before I was asked to leave, a luxury moving van arrived. Brand new furniture was unloaded, fancy couches, chandeliers, even a grand piano. None of which belonged to us. So they were redecorating before they even told me to leave? Suddenly, a notification popped up. My access to the camera had been revoked. Too late. I had already downloaded the footage. I stared at the screen, jaw clenched. Rhea knew. Anita knew. They had made their decision long before I was ever told. They were preparing for a future that didn't include me. And my father? He let it happen. The next week, I started noticing weird things. My emails were being flagged as spam. My job application at a company I was shortlisted for suddenly vanished from their system. I followed up and was told I'd been flagged for inconsistencies in my records. What inconsistencies? Then I got a call from my bank. My old joint savings account with Dad had been closed due to suspicious activity. I hadn't even touched that money. It was meant for emergencies. All signs pointed to one thing. Someone was trying to erase me. I thought I was being paranoid until I checked my credit report. There was a new loan listed under my name, $20,000 from a private lender I'd never heard of. My blood ran cold. Someone had used my information. Someone from the house. Someone who had access. There were only 3 people it could have been. And I was done playing nice. I walked to the mirror, looked at my reflection, eyes tired, heart bruised, but alive. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was war. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were wildfire, racing, burning, destroying everything they touched. There was only one way to stop the spiral. I had to go back.
Not to stay.
Not to plead.
But to see. To know.
I waited for Sunday, Anita's spa day. Rhea usually followed her around like a little shadow. That gave me a window. I dressed in plain jeans and a hoodie, blending in with the crowd as I approached the house I once called home. From the outside, it looked the same. The same rose bushes Mom planted still lined the gate. But inside it was foreign land. I entered through the side. The spare key was gone, of course, but I knew how to pop the old latch near the laundry room window. They never fixed that. The house was quiet. Eerily so. But that quiet was a lie. It buzzed with deception. I slipped in, shoes off to muffle my steps. The air smelled different. Expensive candles now. Ones that reeked of fake lavender and staged perfection. I walked down the hallway, heart in my throat. Everything had changed. My bedroom door, the one that once had a small nameplate reading Anya's World, was freshly painted. The inside, it didn't look like mine anymore. No posters. No books. No trace of who I had been. Instead, it was sleek, neutral, and cold. A guest room with no soul. A room stripped of memory. On the bed sat Rhea's handbag. Careless. Wide open. I shouldn't have, but I did. I reached in, fingers trembling. Inside was a flash drive. No label. No case. Just metal and silence. I pocketed it. Then I heard footsteps. Panic surged through me. I ducked behind the curtain, barely breathing. But the footsteps didn't come up. They went down into the basement. My father's office was there. Curiosity overtook fear. I followed, steps silent. Through the cracked door, I saw something that stopped me cold.
Dad.
And Anita. Standing close. Too close. On the desk between them was a folder. My school records. My bank info. Printouts of my emails. And a document titled, Power of Attorney. Reassignment. My name was on it. But the signature wasn't mine. Anita whispered, "We need to shred everything before she finds out. She's already snooping." Dad said nothing. Just stared at the papers like he didn't recognize them.
Or me.
Then he said something I'll never forget. "Do what you have to do. Just don't let her drag this family down again." Family. This was family? I backed away slowly, heart pounding like thunder in a glass jar. I didn't wait for more. I left the house through the same cracked window, knees buckling once I hit the pavement. Back at my apartment, I plugged in the flash drive. There were 3 folders. 1. Legal. 2. Accounts. 3. Messages. In legal were scanned documents, my bank signatures, contracts I never signed, even a forged resignation letter from my last job. The one I never quit. It had been emailed from my account. In accounts, passwords. To my email, my loan app profile, and even my old social media. They'd been inside my life for months, quietly pulling threads while I blamed myself for everything unraveling. But messages broke me. It was a record of texts between Anita and Rhea. They talked like conspirators, planning things, pushing my father. Rhea. She still thinks Dad loves her LOL. Just wait. Anita.
He's soft.
But I'll fix that. We're so close to the inheritance clearing. Just keep her distracted. Rhea. Can't wait till she's out. This house is mine, anyway. Anita.
Soon.
I already started moving her stuff out. She won't even know until it's too late. The walls spun. My mouth went dry. They hadn't just ruined my life. They'd planned it. Step by step. Lie by lie. Until I was out of the picture. My father hadn't just let it happen. He'd signed off on it. I sat on the floor for hours. The flash drive in my palm. My body numb. This wasn't betrayal. This was surgical erasure. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't dramatic. I was right. But being right didn't make it hurt any less. That night I cried. Not the kind of cry that ends in sleep. The kind that empties your soul, drop by drop. Then I stood up, wiped my face, and whispered to the mirror. They want war. I'll give them hell. I didn't go to work the next day. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I planned. The betrayal sat in my chest like a smoldering coal, burning hotter with every breath. I didn't want revenge just for the sake of pain. I wanted them to see me,
To feel the weight of what they did.
I printed out everything from the flash drive, emails, messages, forged documents. I took screenshots, saved duplicates, and sent backups to my cloud, my work email, and a lawyer friend I barely knew from college, but trusted enough to hold onto a digital grenade. Then I waited until the following Sunday. Ria was celebrating her promotion at a fancy brunch place downtown. She posted it all over Instagram with hashtags like #bossbabe and #manifesting. My stomach turned at her arrogance.
Perfect.
I knew they'd all be there. Dad, Anita, and Ria. I arrived late, on purpose, just as the waiter was clearing entrees and laughter filled the space like broken glass clinking in sunlight. My father looked up. His face went pale. Ria frowned. Why are you here? I pulled out a folder and placed it in front of them like a silent challenge. Anita leaned in, smirking. What's this supposed to be? Everything, I said. Every lie, every forgery, every twisted message you sent. Every single thing you did to push me out of my own life. The table went quiet. My father opened the folder. He flipped through it, scanned the texts, the documents, and I watched as the color drained from his face. Where did you get this? He whispered. I leaned in. From your Golden Girls bag. The one you trusted more than your own daughter. Ria stood up, trying to play it cool. Okay, that's ridiculous. You're obviously having a breakdown. No, I said calmly. You're having a breakdown. You just don't know it yet. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. The audio clip I recorded of them in the basement, the conversation about shredding files, played loud and clear. Other diners began to glance over. Anita reached for my phone. I pulled it back. My father stared at her. You said that? He asked. You actually said those things? Anita hesitated. Then, as smooth as silk, she pivoted. Of course I did. I was protecting us. She was unstable, irrational. I laughed. A bitter, broken laugh. Unstable? Is that what you told him every time you made me look crazy?
She glared.
It wasn't hard. You made it easy. My breath caught. I looked at my dad. You believed that? He said nothing. That silence cut deeper than any insult. I turned to Ria. You're not innocent. You played your part. She rolled her eyes. You're jealous. That's all this is. I slammed my hand on the table. The room fell into a hush. I was never jealous of you, I said, voice shaking. I pitied you, because no matter how much you stole from me, you'll never have what I had, real love, real belonging. And guess what? You burned that too. My father finally spoke. Anya, I didn't know it was this bad. I looked him dead in the eyes. You didn't want to know. He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned to Anita. You forged her resignation? She shrugged. She was going to fail anyway. I just made it cleaner. That was it.
His face changed.
Years of denial cracked under the weight of one shameless admission. He stood up.
Get out, he said.
Anita blinked.
What?
Get out, he repeated, voice low and trembling. You lied to me. You lied about her. Ria stood too. You're seriously taking her side now? After everything she's done to you? He looked at Rhea. You helped destroy your sister's life. You manipulated me. She's not my sister. Rhea screamed, slamming her glass down. And that was the moment it all shattered. The facade. The illusion. The lies. Everyone in the restaurant was watching now. Anita stormed out. Rhea followed, shouting obscenities. But I didn't hear them. Because for the first time in a long time, the silence between me and my father wasn't empty. It was honest. He sat down slowly, eyes glassy. I messed up. I stayed quiet. He whispered. I let them convince me you were the problem. I don't know how to fix this. I leaned forward. You can't. He flinched. You can't undo what you did. I continued. But you can decide who you want to be now. The man who stays silent, or the man who finally speaks the truth. He nodded slowly. I stood, took one last look at the table, the folder, the half-finished meals. Then I said, I didn't come here for an apology. I came here to take back my story. And I walked out. Not angry. Not broken.
Clear.
The silence after a storm always feels the loudest. In the days that followed the confrontation, things moved quickly. Anita tried to do damage control, but the evidence I had was overwhelming. The forged resignation, the doctored emails, and the audio recording were enough for the board of my father's company to step in. She was forced to resign. Quietly, but not without shame. Rhea's reputation plummeted too. She lost the trust of several colleagues who'd once blindly supported her. I didn't even have to lift a finger. Truth has a way of traveling fast when it's been held hostage for too long. My father, he tried. He called, texted, sent emails, flowers,
Cards.
apologies that came a decade too late. I read them all, but I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I focused on myself. Therapy. Healing. Reclaiming the parts of me they'd buried. I moved into a new apartment. Sunlight poured in through the windows, and for once, it didn't feel like the light was a stranger to my life. And then came the moment I'd been dreading. A letter. From my father. It wasn't typed. No assistance involved. Just his handwriting, shaky and raw. I know I can't undo what I let happen. But I've started over. I sold the company. I've donated half of the profits to causes that matter to you. The rest is yours if you ever want it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I see you now. I always should have. I read it a dozen times.
Cried.
Screamed. Then folded it and placed it in my drawer. I wasn't ready to let him back in. But I wasn't ready to erase him either. A few weeks later, I received another message, this time from a lawyer. Apparently, Anita had made one last desperate move before she was ousted. She'd set up a trust. One designed to block me from ever getting anything unless certain conditions were met. She thought she was clever. But karma? Karma has a cruel sense of humor. Because one of the conditions required my father's continued endorsement. And now that he'd severed ties with her completely, she lost the power she thought she'd chained me with. I didn't take the money right away. I didn't need it anymore, not in the way I once did. What I needed was peace. Still, I knew I had to close the loop. And that meant one more meeting. I arranged to meet my father. At the park. No cameras. No business suits. Just him. Just me. He looked older. Tired. But less hollow. I'm glad you came, he said quietly. I didn't come for closure, I told him. I came because I wanted to say something to your face. He braced himself. You hurt me, I said.
Deeply.
But I've realized healing isn't about making people pay. It's about deciding you're done carrying what they handed you. He nodded. I understand. We sat in silence for a while, just watching ducks on the lake. It felt surreal, this calm, this full-circle moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. She visited me last week. I looked at him.
Who?
Anita. I stiffened. She begged me to reconsider everything. Said she made a mistake. Said she'd give up the money, the shares, anything. I laughed bitterly. Of course she did. The throne is gone. Now she wants the scraps. She said something else too, he continued, voice low. She said you'd always been a threat to her. Not because of your presence, but because of your power. That stopped me cold. Your presence, he repeated. It scared her. Because even when she manipulated everything, you still had this grace. And that's something she could never control. For a moment, I didn't speak. Then I said, that's not grace. That's survival. He nodded. We didn't hug. There were no grand reconciliations. But as I got up to leave, he reached into his coat and handed me something.
It was a small velvet box.
What's this?
I asked.
Your mother's locket, he said. I kept it locked away after she passed. I didn't think you were ready for it. But I see now you were always ready. I just wasn't. I opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold locket, slightly tarnished, but still beautiful. I opened it. 2 tiny photos, me and my mother, both smiling, both radiant. I clutched it close to my chest. For the first time, it didn't feel like a weapon of sentimentality. It felt like armor. As I walked away, I didn't look back. That chapter was done. 6 months later, I sat at the grand opening of my new business. A wellness studio built on healing, empowerment, and truth. The walls were painted in calming hues, and sunlight filtered in like a blessing. I called it Revive, because that's what I did. I revived myself. From betrayal. From invisibility. From being cast aside. And just as I was locking up one evening, I saw her. Rhea. Standing outside. She looked thinner.
Lost.
Like a shadow of the girl who once wore my life, like a trophy. I came to say something, she said. I paused. Make it quick. She swallowed hard. I didn't just steal your job. I stole your journal. My heart stopped. What? She looked ashamed. When we were teens. I found it. The one where you wrote about Mom. About feeling alone. I used it to convince Dad you were unstable. I wanted to scream.
To cry.
But I didn't. I simply said, I know. She blinked. You do? I always did, I replied. But you know what the worst part is? I spent years thinking I was broken.
When it was really you.
She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I said again. But I'm not the same girl you left behind. I closed the door. This time, she was the one on the outside.
And I
was finally home,